by lineage, so I'm displaced presently in Toronto, so it's good to be back home. Corporate Knights, the mission of Corporate Knights is to reinforce and to advance sustainable development here in Canada, and that's why we've organized this breakfast this morning with the assistance of Bob, Preston, and the Alberta Environmental Stewardship Coalition. Now that that's out of the way, I'd like to thank everybody kindly for showing up this morning, taking the time, especially those of you who had to drive in or come from afar.
The goal of our initiative is to put Canadian water issues in a global context, and within that context I would like to submit that there are 5 things we should do to address concerns related to management of water in Alberta and a thriving economy and a rapidly growing population situation. We have to immediately dispel the myth of limitless water abundance in Canada. We do not have as much water as we think. Second thing is that we have to start to value water as an important resource in its own right. When all the oil's gone, water will define our economic and social reality. The third thing is that we have to seriously examine our water laws. You can't manage 21st century problems with 19th century legislative tools. It's time to face the fact that we have for a very long time been in a very luxurious situation with water resources. And really, in effect, we're not proactively managing either water, surface water or groundwater anywhere in Canada, and especially in the West. What we're doing is cobbling together responses and compromises to cover up past situations. If we don't want water availability and quality issues to limit our social and economic development, we have to completely overhaul our water law. And this is going to be very difficult. I don't envy politicians who will be forced to do it. It will be painful, but it has to be done. Climate change gives us no option. It will take at least a generation to reform water legislation in Alberta that must be done. Fourth thing that we have to do, in my estimation at least, is we have to take climate change seriously. That means the development of serious water conservation programs, management of water resources on a watershed basis, and it also means integrated land use management. And finally, I suspect compared to other countries, we don't have a water crisis here yet, but we have to get moving before there is one, before water scarcity limits our economic and social development. And that means that we have to listen and respond to science. We have to find new ways to prevent and resolve conflicts over water allocation and use. And we have to take our situation and the future seriously. We have to learn from others elsewhere in the world who have been where we are now before us. The Alberta Water for Life strategy is a guide, but it isn't helpful unless we find expression for that guide in real action. Talk is great, but we have to act. So I suspect that we have the talent in this province. We certainly have the science and knowledge. It's time to move.
Add my words of welcome and thank Toby and the gang for getting us all together. Like many people of my generation, my interest in environmental issues, if I'm honest about it, comes more from my children and my grandchildren than my own intellectual pursuits. We have 9 grandkids under 10. I was helping one of the 7-year-olds brush his teeth the other night, and I turned the tap on. He says, "You're wasting water." He says, "This is a 7-year-old." He says, "We're going to run out of water." I think that's Dr. Schindler's thesis. This is from a 7-year-old. Secondly, I have an interest in filling the the holes in the intellectual capital of politicians. Some of you might think that's a huge task. But I think one of the holes, all politicians, when you come to issues of the environment, and particularly things that are attributed to the pressure that industry and business puts on the environment, their instinctive reaction is to go to regulation as the solution. Regulation, legislation, etc. I have an interest in that, but I also have an interest in how do you harness market mechanisms to the solution of environmental problems, including water shortages. I think unless we get the right mix between regulation and legislation and harnessing market mechanisms, we won't begin to solve the problem. So that's my particular interest here. The third thing, and the only other point I'd like to make, is that like many of you, I've gone to all kinds of conferences, discussions, etc. on these types of issues for the last number of years. And all of these are good, but I see the discussion so often taking place at 90,000 feet. And one of the tasks, I think, of a group like this is to try to get that discussion down from 90,000 feet to some practical actions that can be taken and can be taken now. So my hope in that definition of the common ground at the end is that we actually come up with a couple of things that can be done as distinct from more matters that can be discussed. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you very much for having me.